You are listening to the Hodges Huddle, where we discuss all things in the wide world of sports. Here is your KLSU sports team.
Welcome into the Hodges Huddle. I am your host, Michael Poggi, alongside my wonderful co-workers, Randall and Wilson, and our rook, of course, Alex Sheasley. At some point, I'm going to have to stop saying the rook. But for now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Not to mention Jaden Smith helping with production and William Gilreath doing the switcher. Guys, we're back. It's the 7th pod of the semester. How we doing on this fine Monday evening? It's not a victory Monday by any means, but how we doing?
Recharged.
Yeah?
Fall break was nice. Able to kind of regroup, refocus, and get some energy because this is going to be an emotional, I feel, podcast, and so we'll have a little bit of oomph for that for y'all today.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. It was nice to just have like a good long weekend, even though we didn't win, but it's okay.
Yeah, like I said, it's not a victory Monday, but, we're going to talk about the Fighting Tigers of LSU and their second loss of the season, coming on the road to Vanderbilt this past weekend, 31-24. So, honestly, it's going to be a long one of just talking about this, so let's just get right into it. But, first things first, guys, what was initially, because, of course, it was a long game. There were ups and downs all the way through. What was really the deciding factor in LSU really losing this ball game? There's a lot of factors that play into this, but what's kind of what's the main one that really strikes your attention that you think, okay, if this didn't happen, LSU might have had a better chance?
I kind of point initially to it being a complete coaching meltdown on every kind of aspect. It was a preparation failure from LSU to come into this game. Kelly talked about it this morning in his morning presser that LSU showed out in Nashville this week. That was not a road game.
Yeah, fan wise,
it was you got to handle your biz there, and y'all talked about it last week that this is a game that you have to be well prepared for. You expect as an LSU team to win this game, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But they came out, they failed to be disciplined in key situations. A lot of the issues that kind of reared their ugly head towards the start, through the year, defense that when it's on the field for a long time kind of melts down a little bit. Just complete inability in the red zone, stuff like that. Like I mentioned, flags and just critical components of the ball game. That's what let you down. That's what let you down on Saturday in Nashville. That defense had that off game. I can go either way on that. And then just Nussmeier, he had a good game, but he's really limited, and that hurts you today.
Yeah, I said defense mostly because Witt was hurt. I think that really shows a somebody that is very important on your D-line and somebody that you utilize so much, but it kind of hurt you in the long run because, I don't know, I don't think our defense was really up to par this game the way that
Not at all.
we have been talking about, we said so much and we gassed them up so much just for them to go out there and not really do their best in Vandy.
Yeah, I agree with both you guys. Witt not being there hurt on all sorts of levels. You could see from the jump just how the linebackers were moving. It was the same thing last year when Perk went down. Witt wasn't the same. And they really are just if you have that three-headed snake back there with West, Witt, and Perk, it's a dangerous, atmosphere for any quarterback, any offense that they're going up against. But you mentioned the coaching, and we're going to talk a lot about the coaching today. There were many, many issues on just whether that came from play calling, whether that was who was in the game, whether that was making sure that we had the right amount of people on the field, taking timeouts in certain areas. There were just a bunch of things going on that just didn't go right for this LSU football team. And it's almost gotten to the point where it's okay, we're getting tired of this. Mm-hmm. From an LSU fan standpoint, it's okay, when's this really going to change? The quote-unquote best roster LSU has had since 2019. all the things that have been said, taking receipts, going to the national championship, it can be really overwhelming for LSU fans. But I think the main deciding factor was just this team is just not as good as everybody thought it was. I think that's really the main piece. I just don't like this. At the end of the day, this team could really realistically be 7-5. When it's all said and done, they realistically could. And it's just, I don't really know. It's just there's pieces all around. I don't really necessarily think that Nuss was an issue at all. I think
That's fair.
I
Yeah.
think Garrett Nussmeier played the best game.
He did the best he could.
I think that was his best game this season.
Yeah, I
by
agree.
far.
I agree. That was his best game this year, but he's still not who he was, I guess is my point.
Yeah,
and
but if you're going to point a finger to this game and
it's
this
not
game
him.
alone,
No, but it was a contributing factor in my mind.
I see. I don't really see it as a contributing factor for this game necessarily.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think for the season, 100%, he's been an issue. But I mean, when you only have a second and a half to throw the football, I said last week, it honestly, and it kind of was true, the offensive line is going to win or lose you this football game. And they were horrendous.
They were,
horrendous.
I agree.
And even though you were able to get some running action here and there, here and there, I'm saying, like here and there. Like you got Harlan Berry every now and then, but and then the long run with Durham. But other than that, there was no movement on the offensive line. There was no aggressiveness. So I think there's that would probably be my deciding factor. But let's go back to the coaching. And we kind of mentioned it a little bit, and we have no say in this. But in y'all's opinion, do you think it's almost time for Brian Kelly to kind of
should have been gone yesterday. He should have been gone yesterday, Michael Poggi. If that's my thesis, I have two real kind of subplots for that.
Yeah.
It comes down to the whittling down of expectation in Baton Rouge and a failure from Brian Kelly to understand the fan base. And I'll start with kind of the expectation. There's that saying, Mike Tomlin popularized it, the standard is the standard. And since the turn of the century up until Brian Kelly got hired, the standard was 2 losses is a disaster of a season. You got to go 11-1, 12-0. That's the expectation in Baton Rouge. And when you didn't live up to that, Les Miles, Coach O, whoever it was, there were conversations about getting them out. And Brian Kelly comes in, and I think he gets bolstered because they made the SEC championship game, and they beat Alabama in his first year. But that was not a complete season. He gets some sympathy there because of the scholarship player issue, all that stuff. We're in year 4 of this now, and nothing's improved. We're looking at another 4-loss season down the pipe, maybe a 5, maybe a 6-loss season for LSU if you really want to doom out a little bit. But it seems to be accepted now. And I saw that clip of Nick Saban after a win going like, "I'm happy with the result. I'm happy we won the football game, but we need to play better. I'm not happy with how we executed that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back and improve on that." There's been none of that. I mean, we saw him blow up on Cobble against after the Florida win about him asking a question about the offense because he doesn't in a game where the offense looked awful. The offense looked incredibly bad. And he fails to take accountability for those failures. And I spoke with Whit Weeks after the loss at Ole Miss, and it's the type of guy Whit Weeks is for one, but he's smiling. He's, not necessarily upset about the loss. And that's a culture that would not have existed in Baton Rouge even 10 years ago. A loss at Ole Miss would be shameful. You expect to beat Ole Miss. They are little brother. And that, he's 2-2 against them. And you look at his entire track record, he's 11-11 away from Tiger Stadium. He's 5-10 against ranked opponents anywhere. I mean, it's not who LSU is. You expect to win in Tiger Stadium, and he flaunts that record, but everywhere else, he fails to live up to that.
The one thing that, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I would say that the one with the Whit Weeks, that is simply just who Whit Weeks is.
Yeah, no, that is who Whit Weeks is.
You could probably tell him that his dog died, and he'd probably be smiling.
He'd be smiling it off.
But I would say that, with the coaching aspect and just like the expectation, I would say that undefeated one-loss mindset really hasn't come from like a fan standpoint. Obviously, you always need to be Ole Miss. Obviously, you need to do this. I'd say that wouldn't I think that started in 2019. And
Sure, maybe.
I think that started in 2019. I mean, you have to really go back to like how long was Les Miles here?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? How long?
Yeah.
And how many 2-loss, 3-loss, 4-loss seasons did he have? And then you let Coach O go 5-6 years, whatever it was, and then he had that one big year, and then obviously it got worse. But I would say that is probably from a fan standpoint of just I don't agree with Brian Kelly when he said you're spoiled, but I think LSU fans are spoiled a little bit in a sense when it comes to thinking that you're just going to be able to go undefeated. And just not. I don't really see that as very realistic. You're not going to be able to go undefeated every year.
Sure, no, and I'm not saying you are, but
the 4 losses, the 3 losses, another 9-4 season. The problem is a 9-4 season probably keeps Brian Kelly back here unless he, and I'll get this in a second, but I think Brian Kelly, look, I don't necessarily think it's time right now for him to be fired. I think after this season, depending on how things go, you need to get rid of him, especially with the opening of the Florida job, because in my opinion, that Florida job is the best job in college football with the amount of money they have, with the amount of support that they get from their athletic department. I think that Florida job is very good. I think that Penn State job is actually a really good job. And so with all these, jobs starting to open up, there's going to be more that open up after this season. And so I think if LSU is looking to get into this carousel, they need to do it sooner rather than later. I think if Brian Kelly loses to A&M and then he loses to Alabama, he's gone. I think if he loses to Arkansas in any way, shape, or form, he's gone. But if he loses 3 in a row, he's gone. Mm-hmm. I think if you lose to A&M at home, depending on how, say you get blown out by A&M, I'd say there's a 40% chance they get rid of him. I'd say if you lose to Bama, I'd say there's probably a 70% chance you get rid of him. And that's just from like a logical standpoint. But yes, as from a fan standpoint, I'm exhausted of it. I've been one of his biggest defenders for the past four seasons, and it's gotten to a point where you can't really defend him anymore. And your track record is right with the 5 wins and the 11-11 on the road. Like that cannot happen.
Yeah.
But I think just at the end of the day, they're going to make the right decision, but it's gotten to a point where it's like, okay, let's kind of, as I said before, when I called you the Rook, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, guess what? It's broke.
Yeah.
So you might as well, try and fix something a little bit.
I think that's the thing. You talk about that fan culture. That was kind of my other point with the spoiled comment and all that stuff. Who knows if he's right? Like who knows if he's right, wrong, like about making those comments. And maybe it is an LSU fan perspective, but he fails to understand the history of LSU football and the expectation of being the head coach here. And when he makes a comment like you're spoiled for raising criticism about a run game, and this is a program that has fostered some of the greatest running backs in college football history, they don't run the ball at all. They can't run the ball, and it's a fair question to ask. And so to lash out like that, it draws ire on you. He's been drawing ire towards himself in being unable to relate to this program ever since he stepped foot on campus with the whole "I'm here with my family" thing. So,
and I think
he's not the man for talk about the Michigan man, in Ann Arbor. He's not a Baton Rouge man. You know what I mean?
He is a Big Ten football coach.
Yeah.
He is.
And
at the end of the day, he's a Big Ten football coach. But it also and we will talk about Joe Sloan also, but Brad Davis is not it anymore either, man. And Brad Davis hasn't been able to do anything since he got here. And he was gifted 2 amazing O-linemen, and other than that, he just hasn't been able to produce. And so it's getting to the point where it's like, okay, some things need to be changed. I don't agree with the spoil comment, but I do see a vision from a like, okay, undefeated to 1, 2, 3, or 4 losses kind of thing. But if it's a consistent 9-4 for 7 years, like that's just not going to cut it.
Yeah.
But where I do see your point is I don't see any change.
Yeah.
I don't see how this experiment could work next year. I don't see how this experiment with Brian Kelly could work in 2 years. I don't see it.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to be able to see it this year, and I just haven't been able to see it. What do you think, Randall?
Well, yeah, you guys kind of said everything I was really going to say, but I agree and I disagree with both of you. I agree that if you're not seeing change and you're seeing the same record for 4 seasons now, it's like, okay, we're a little bit tired. And I think there needs to be something that has to be different. And I also agree on the comments. I agree that I just don't think that you are a Baton Rouge man. I don't think that this is going to be the job for you in the long run. That, I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Like we said before, he's a Big Ten coach.
Yeah.
He's not supposed. He doesn't belong in the SEC. If he's not going to understand if he's going to get feelings hurt or answer questions a little bit upset with how fans are reacting or how something is asked a question, then you're probably not supposed to be here.
Yeah,
But
whatever's there to be said about kind of the homogenization of college football and the college football landscape of conferences realigning and everybody kind of coming together. Yeah, you're right. Like he's a Big Ten guy, he's a Midwest guy, he's not built for down here, and I think that might be the biggest demerit against him is he's not built to last in the SEC.
Yes,
dog eat dog down here.
He's just not. But he let's say he goes in on Saturday and beats A&M, and then he goes in and this isn't going to happen. But let's say he goes into Tuscaloosa and somehow beats Alabama. Then you're saying different things.
Sure,
you're talking different topics. But it's been what ifs this whole season, and it's kind of been. It almost feels like it's a what if scenario with Brian Kelly.
And you talk about what ifs. I mean, I feel like the last 3 years have been what ifs.
Yeah, I mean, what if we win out? What if we win out? What if
he
we win
bought himself
out?
goodwill with the Alabama win, with the SEC title. He's taken that goodwill through seasons that are not up to LSU's standard.
Right.
And fans and, I think in Scott Woodward's office and in athletic admin, there's a discussion of, like you said, where's we can't do what if anymore.
Right. But here's the reality of it, man. If he beats A&M, I don't see a world.
Yeah, no, he'll stick around.
See a world.
Yeah.
I think even if he beats A&M and then he loses to Bama and then he somehow loses to Arkansas at home, if you lose to Arkansas at home, even if you beat, I think he's gone. And that's just plain and simple. But let's move to another coach because I think we're giving BK a little bit too much attention. Even though it is a very serious thing, and it's something that needs to be kind of settled. But is it almost time for Joe Sloan as well?
Should have been gone as well.
Yeah,
and it's another demerit against Brian Kelly because you talk about the Blake Baker hire. That was an administrative hire that was coming from LSU and Scott Woodward and all the kind of front office types in LSU. Sloan was Kelly's guy.
Yeah.
And he has gone on to lead the LSU offense this year to be one of 2 teams in all of college football, or FBS, that have not scored more than 25 points against an FBS school. Do you know what the other one is? North Carolina.
Oh, God.
That's your company.
I did not know that.
That's your company. And there's all that discussion right now about fire Bill Belichick and the disaster that's going on in Chapel Hill. It's happening here too. And
here's
he's an offensive mind, and he's enabled this, and Bill Belichick isn't. And
here's what I'll say. I'd say that the Joe Sloan conversation is more important than the Brian Kelly conversation. Yeah. I think Joe Sloan should have been left in Oxford. And that's just that's just how it I just don't really see how I think the way he schemes plays, the way you use screens to kind of elevate your run game. Then you throw trickery in there, and it's like, what are you doing? You got 3 offensive
Yeah, that
linemen,
one
and you
formation.
almost throw an interception. And it's like, it's almost just like, okay, what's going on? And it's just bland offense, and it's just not going to work. And I think with the style of quarterback that he may have, it doesn't work around Joe Sloan's offense. I think, Jaden Daniels saved these man's career. Like, Jaden Daniels is one of the main reasons why these two are still wearing the purple and gold. But it's just getting to a point where it just gets frustrating from a fan perspective. And just not being able to run the football when you have guys who can obviously go run the football. But it's just simple stuff. It's simple stuff like play calling. It's simple stuff like not being able to score inside the red zone. It's only getting 3 points when you're inside the 20 on 1st and 10 or inside the 5 on 1st and goal. It's stuff like that just kind of makes you think, okay, it's time for you to go.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with everything, honestly. With Joe Sloan, I think that, again, is like a bigger conversation. I think that's our main focus that we need to worry about, because I think we've also said it, our offense is just not surprising. You know what I mean? Like
it doesn't shock you at all.
Exactly. But like there's nothing that we're doing where I'm like, oh, that was really good. Every game I'm just like, oh, well, there goes the offense again. You know what I mean? So there's nothing that is exciting about our offense. I think everybody watches, yes, for the offense, but for the defense as well. And so I think his time is more up than Brian Kelly's is, for sure.
Yeah, I would have to say the same. So let's talk about some play calling and some in-game decision making. What were your guys' thoughts on what happened on the 1st and goal, down 10 early in the 4th quarter? Alex, if you kind of want to give a rundown of what that situation was before you give me your thoughts, that would be amazing.
Sure, yeah. So LSU, just some kind of table setting there. Caden Durham breaks off a huge run on 3rd down.
Don't know how he didn't score.
Yeah, you talk about, first of all, LSU ran for, I don't even know how many yards, like 100-something yards, 100 yards on the nose. 51 of those came from Caden Durham. So you didn't really do anything on that one run. So you didn't do anything with the run game, but you had that one big run, and Brian Kelly will talk about that for weeks. But they get down to the 1-yard line. They line up with 10 men. They just run straight in the back of their O-line. Don't get in the end zone. From there, I'm pulling it up. They take a timeout, come out of that timeout, get a false start. And now they're nowhere close. They dial up. I believe it was another run play. They don't get any yardage. Was it a direct snap to Juwan Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah. They lose a yard, I believe.
They did.
And
one
then,
carry, -1 yard.
Awesome day for him. But on 3rd down, obvious passing situation. The O-line fails to protect Nussmeier. Has to hurry out a throw. It's incomplete because the ball isn't great because he doesn't have time to throw. They have to settle for a field goal. Team loses by 7. No killer instinct in the red zone. That was kind of the takeaway. It was a microcosm for this game, for the LSU offense.
But and here's my thought process. So you take that timeout on the 1st and goal, right? You took it on the 1st and goal, or did you take it on the 2nd and goal?
Yeah,
it was 2nd and goal.
I believe so. Yeah.
So was the flag? I'm sorry, I'm behind.
Yeah, here's the sequence. Durham runs for 51. Durham runs for 1st and goal. Durham runs for 1. Timeout LSU. False start LSU.
Okay.
Direct to Johnson. Incomplete pass.
After that 1-yard rush, you're like what? On the 1-yard line? Maybe the inch, you know what I mean? Maybe the half-yard yard line. I don't care that you only had 10 men on the field. Why aren't you why aren't you handing the ball off and just getting in the end zone? You don't need 11 men on the field for that. You know what I mean? It's not like it's not like the 11th guy is going to bring you glory, and then you throw on your 3rd string tight end into the game after the timeout, who Lord knows how many snaps he played in that whole game, and then you throw him in and he gets a false start, and then just like that you're 5 yards back, and it's like, okay, all the momentum that we ever had is now gone. the Vandy student section that was actually very loud,
Yeah.
even though it was a sea of purple and gold in there, gets fired up. That place was rocking, and you just weren't able to execute. And it just doesn't make sense to me why you do those little things. Why was Donovan Green in the football game? I don't know. Did you want to try and get some more blocking because your O-line hasn't been good? Maybe. But to me, it just doesn't make sense. And then it's like, okay, let's go wildcat formation, and we're on the 6-yard line. Let's go wildcat and direct snap it to, Jawan Johnson, who that was his first carry the entire game. It just doesn't add up. And back to Joe Sloan, his whole offense has been very bland, is the word I would like to say for how I would describe his offense. It's a very bland offense. And then when he tries to spice it up, it's just stupid. It's just, you know what I mean? It's not like, it's just dumb. It doesn't make sense. And I mean, I don't get paid millions of dollars to coach football, but I have eyes and I watch a lot of football, and I haven't seen that very much. And it's just, literally as soon as we got that false start, I was like, okay, the game's over.
Yeah.
The game's over. Like as soon as they because Xavier was in the end zone. Like he was just in the end zone. I'm like, yeah, touchdown, and it's over. But it's like from a reporter side of things, you have to be like, okay, Brian, what happened in this scenario? And they ask him, and he answers with, I just want to make sure that we had the right guys on there. Not that there was only 10 men on the field, or then, okay, we throw the wrong guy on there who gives you the false start. It just doesn't add up to me. Anything?
Oh,
anything to add on?
No, yeah, I think it was just dumb play calling. Honestly, there's really not much to more say about it. I think it was just dumb. There's so many other things that you could have done to help us tie or win the football game, and it was not there.
Well, I don't even think it's just in that point of the game, 7 was just so much more important than 3 points.
Exactly.
You get that 7. You can hold them to a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
You can hold them to a field goal, and then you have momentum on that offensive side, and momentum's a lot in college football. It is everything. It's confidence, especially with a guy like Garrett
the unit was going that
and they were starting to click a little bit, even though that run was really only like the major thing that happened on that drive that really helped them. It was just, it's just little things, man. And when the other thing that's frustrating is then when you go look back at the press conference and every player and every coach is just talking about details. Well, then why aren't we focused on the details? I don't understand what's so hard about the details that we can't figure it out. I don't know.
I do want to make a point on the press conferences. I haven't seen, and I hate sounding like a broken record. I haven't seen Brian Kelly take ownership of anything happening. I haven't heard him say that he personally needs to do a better job at getting these guys prepared for the game, being better in situations, being better in person since the Vegas game.
Yeah.
And his big, meltdown there. And I'm lost because I listen to him and I feel like he's like a politician up there. He just says nothing. He says nothing. And it's incredible. And like you said, it was kind of that speak again today where he just, or on Saturday, where he just doesn't give you any. It's like he doesn't know it happened.
Right.
And he said today during his presser, he was like, I don't see any issues with our red zone offense. Are we watching a different game? Did he take a bus to Knoxville on accident?
No, I get you. I get you. And it's frustrating. And there's a lot of things that, can be frustrating from a fan side of things, and even just from a reporting side of things. Like it's, when you're covering a team for so long, even, from fall camp, just, seeing the progressions that you were able to see, and then just it all going out the window.
Yeah.
It's confusing. It's not really understanding what the issue is. And honestly, we had an episode last year, and it might even be the title of the podcast, but it was has Brian Kelly lost the locker room? And we talked about that for probably the whole pod, and it very honestly might be the same issue that's been here. And to be honest, I don't think he ever regained the locker room from when we had this suspicion of maybe he lost it last year. I think, the amount of times you see him and Nuss getting into it on the sidelines, stuff like that, I don't think there's a whole lot of consistency between the player relationship and the coaching relationship.
Yeah, they're not on the same
wavelength.
Yeah, no.
And I think that's kind of been a big issue for this team. But let's move over to Nussmeier. You kind of mentioned it a little bit, but explain to me your thoughts on my opinion, one of the only main positives of Saturday's game, and that was how Garrett Nussmeier played. So how did you guys think he played with the circumstances that, happened throughout the game? But honestly, just, what did you think of his play?
I thought like you said, he played the best game he has this year. I think he played the best game he could have played, today with his physical limitations, with what the offensive line was giving you. 19 for 28, 255 yards, a couple of tutties, 158 passing. It's a good day in the office.
Yep.
And it could have been better. And that is both the kind of thing that makes me happy about Nussmeier. I'm happy to see that out of Nussmeier, that he can kind of step that up. But it's also so frustrating because he played really well, and it was things not in his control that held him back from having a generational type day, a day that can lift you over Vanderbilt, on Saturday. Things like the offensive line allowing way too many hurries or letting him get hit, whittling down his health even further. Stuff like that is really frustrating. And it just kind of as the unit, the offensive unit as a whole, really loved what I saw from the skill players. When they got the ball in their hands, I felt like they were making things happen. It was just, we've talked about with Blake Baker, the scheming was kind of not set up for them to succeed. But overall, liked what I saw of the unit, liked what I saw out of Nussmeier. And, the O-line, it's critical. It is so critical. You watch it with the Saints right now. They can't block at all. They haven't been able to block for the last few years. That offense feels anemic. It is a hinge point, and it let them down again. Because I still think the skill is so prevalent in this offense, and it's held back even on a good day by the O-line.
Yeah, I have to agree. He has a really good game, and it just seems like everybody else has a really bad game. So it's stuff that he can't really change or help fix because he was I thought he had a really good game. He had 225 passing yards, which was more than Diego Pavia. He had 160. So I think he played great, and I know it must, like you were saying, it must be just frustrating having everything.
It's frustrating for us. I'm sure for him, he's as big of a team player as you're going to find in that LSU locker room. And even he was, after the game, he had to be consoled about, what he gave for the team and the result. He was really chopped up about that. And so I like seeing that. I like seeing that sort of motor, that drive to win games and being frustrated from him. Because I talked about earlier, I feel like there's a culture issue that Brian Kelly has kind of instilled, and you talked about losing the locker room. So maybe there is that difference there where the players want to win. And it's just Brian Kelly doesn't understand that down here, winning is everything. And especially maybe not in Louisiana because of the same, but college football, it's bigger than pro sports down here. Yeah. And if you only get so many seasons. And yeah, that's really all I have. I don't want to get another BK rant. Sorry.
I have to agree, though,
I think Nussmeier, because I'm going to go back to Nussmeier positive from my point
Yeah.
of view. He impressed me, man. He really did. I think that was the first game where I was like, because, man, he was getting killed back there. Like,
Yeah.
he was getting hit like no other. And I was like, man, if he wasn't hurt before, he is going to be hurting now.
Yeah.
He was getting rocked. And I think that when you have your two tackles, hold on, your two offensive tackles were graded 37.6 in PFF and 23.7 in pass blocking. Weston Davis doesn't have a PFF grade above 65 this season. Pretty sure his highest was 59.5.
Yeah.
That's not gonna cut it. Like, I hate to break it
There
to
was
you.
that.
But that 1.5 second, 2 second margin of time and space in the pocket is not going to win you football games. I don't care if you have prime Drew Brees back there. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
He was putting the ball where it needed to be. He was running outside the pocket, getting tackled, and finding random guys. He had the miracle play to Xavier Thomas. That should have probably never happened, but honestly, the ball should have never even gotten to him in the first place, and it did. I think the way he was able to make stuff out of nothing was very impressive. This was the first game where I was able to sit back and be like, okay, there's really nothing I can say about Nuss's ability. And what people will combat with that is, okay, well, they need a running quarterback. They need somebody who can move outside of the pocket. If you're not having time in the pocket, you need somebody who's going to be mobile and go get your first down. Well, guess what? You don't have that. And you knew that you weren't going to have that coming into the season. You knew that your starting quarterback was returning, and you knew what he can do inside the pocket, and you knew his abilities outside of the pocket. You knew that. You knew what you were getting
and you failed to
before
scheme
the
for
season
that.
started.
And I think that adds to my frustration. Like I talked about the frustration of the O-line being unable to help him, and just the circumstances of his physical wellness right now. And then you look at, another thing you can't control is what Joe Sloan's cooked up for him, and a failure to adapt his scheme to let him, shine. And granted, if you don't have an O-line, you're not going to do anything. But yeah, there could have been some more done from Sloan to kind of improve that.
Well, let's move on once again. Let's go to the defensive side of things before we kind of talk about the future of this LSU team. What changed, between the South Carolina game in the defense, being able to contain a running quarterback? One guy that we really haven't talked about from a coaching standpoint is Blake Baker. I think Blake Baker's had an amazing, season. But in the two losses, he's honestly failed to adjust.
Yeah.
And that's been kind of like a thing that you've been able to circle. He's failed to adjust. And yes, he didn't have Whit weeks.
That hurt. Yeah.
And that hurt you so much. Not having your guy there was very crucial. But what changed, man? Containing a running quarterback to the past weekend, because you were able to contain Sellers. You were really able to contain Sellers, and you were worried about his ability to run the football and his ability to throw the football. You were worried about Sellers. What changed, man, with Diego Pavia?
You lost on the edge. There were a number of times that Perk would come flying in on an option and just whiff. He didn't make the right read, and Pavia would do what he does in open space. And I think another thing, just confidence. Like you had Sellers rattled from the get-go, and there was never sort of a moment where you established yourself as something to be feared in the front seven. And that's really who's responsible for controlling Pavia in this circumstance. And so I think that's what it comes down to. I think, you lost on the edge, you lost at the line, and you didn't get a win early enough. And maybe if you do, that doesn't change the ship. But with how high-flying Vanderbilt has been this year and how confident they are in themselves and their ability, I mean, they were in it for that Alabama game. People look at the scoreboard, they say,
they were in it.
They were in it. And
they made mistakes.
Alabama had that one drive where they kind of, took the life out of Vanderbilt. But before that, it was game on. And so
Bama's good too. Bama's really good.
Yeah, Bama is good, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But just it's a little bit harder for me to diagnose what went wrong than it was for Chambliss. With Ole Miss, it was very clear. It was Chambliss is a capable quarterback, a guy who can burn you with your feet, who has a plethora of offensive weapons around him. And that's not saying Vanderbilt, doesn't have backs and receivers, but they're not to that level.
No, they aren't to that level at all. But they
so
do have weapons. They had
they
had the 6'7" tight end that those announcers kept saying the entire time. I don't think I've heard 6'7" so much in my entire life. And then they had weapons. They had Stowers.
Yeah.
They had guys that they were able to get the ball to. They had the 2 running backs that were great, and then they ran that triple option that you just couldn't stop.
Yeah.
Jack Pyburn had a terrible time out there. You mentioned missing tackles. You mentioned getting to that edge. Pyburn was out there, and as soon as he was once he was on an island, it was just over. He wasn't able to get wrap around on him. You know what I mean? He just wasn't able to do it. So what was kind of I'm gonna ask this to you. What do you think was just so crucial for? He mentioned the edge. I mentioned Pyburn. What do you think really just separated this game compared to the South Carolina game?
Not having Whit Weeks. And I know I kind of already said
Touch on
answer.
that.
But we talked about it earlier. You have your big 3. You have West, you have Whit, and you have Perk. And I'm going to touch on what you said too. There was nothing that you did out there to make them be scared.
Yeah.
And I think we were more scared than they were. And that is the difference between that game and the South Carolina game. With your big 3 out there, I thought Whit did great in the South Carolina game, but then you come to this game and it's you don't even have him, and then you have West and Perk making the wrong reads, which I was also.
And I thought West played well.
Yeah, I thought West was good. I mean, he's not going to be Whit.
He's not going to.
Yeah, and I think touching on what Randall said, you look at the dynamic between quarterback and linebacker, and that is one of the greatest kind of, especially a mobile quarterback, greatest kind of tangos and standoff relationship. It's pitcher batter, and then that when it comes to sport, things to watch. And if you don't have a guy to the caliber of Whit Weeks, that is going to hurt you.
Exactly. And
that was a on paper difference coming into the game that manifested on the field.
And I'm just going to add into this before we talk about the Tigers' future, but it's so crazy to me how the game against Ole Miss ends, and just like that, Trinidad Chambliss is in the Heisman conversation. And then you lose to Vanderbilt, and just like that, Diego Pavia's a true Heisman contender for some reason. Is there a pattern? It's
a testament to the defense.
Yeah.
It is a legitimate.
Is there a pattern? That's what I don't understand, because the defense can be so good week in, week out, and then they have one hiccup, and just like that, the guy they're playing against is a Heisman contender. It doesn't it's not like they've been talking about Pavia being a Heisman contender all season. They've said he's great. They've said he's incredible.
Yeah.
They haven't put him in the top 3. You know what I mean? It's not that's been unless from my point of view, it hasn't really been a serious thing. And then as soon as Chambliss goes off, obviously people were understanding what Chambliss was able to do, but that was his really first test. And then as soon as that test happens, boom, he's a contender, just like that. People are throwing money on him to win the damn thing. And so it to me, it's just frustrating. But does that make sense to you guys? Is there a pattern?
Yeah,
what's going on?
So it makes sense to me. Let's face it, the Heisman is a quarterback award now more than ever.
Yeah.
And LSU's defense is, like I said, it's a testament to LSU's defense as to how good it is. And if you can beat that defense, it's always going to look. It's a resume builder. It is something you can put on your resume that I beat that LSU defense,
Yep.
especially in this game where it was kind of not necessarily you got boat race, but it was a high scoring game, and you outscored a sluggish LSU offense that actually performed for once. That's something to hang your hat on. And
Right.
I think from a changing the tide of the Vanderbilt football program in general, Diego Pavia deserves some conversation for that. Do I think he's the guy for the Heisman? No, but it is the most open Heisman race for this point of the year since I don't know when. Like, it is, anybody can
Right.
get the Heisman at this point in the year. So yeah, I think he should be in the consideration. I think he's towards the back end of the list, but top 5, top 7, kind of in that range for me. And this win definitely elevated him into that standard.
For sure.
I agree. Turning around Vanderbilt's whole season, I mean, now they're 6-1. We haven't even lost to Vandy since 1990. I want to say.
91?
Yeah.
90?
Yeah. So I think so. I think you said it. The test is beating our defense, and if you can do that, I agree. It's a resume thing. If you can say that you did that, I think you deserve to be in the conversation. Not necessarily win, but yeah. That's just, I just agree with what Alex said.
It's frustrating, man, and I'm gonna. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna quote my guy Andon, and he said this. He said this last year, man. This ain't your daddy's Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This ain't your grandpa's Vanderbilt. This is a new day and age Vanderbilt, who has gone into the portal, who has used their resources wisely, got the coach that they want, and that they believe in, and they've been able to make stuff happen out of nothing, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's props to them. Obviously, from an LSU side of things, there's things that need to change. But you got to control what you can control, and Vanderbilt has done that in every
They've done
way,
that
shape,
phenomenally.
or form.
And just real quick, Pavia, I talked about him kind of reshaping that program. First time Vanderbilt's ranked in the top 10. They came in 10th in this week's 8 People. First time since 1948.
48, yeah.
And so for a near century, a generational kind of event, and who knows,
First college game day ever, by the way.
yeah, first game day ever. There was a stat, it was the first ranked on ranked in 50, 60 odd years. He absolutely should be in there. It's hats off to that program for what they've done. It is something to behold in Nashville.
Yeah. No, then next week's going to be a big one for them against Missouri. Missouri coming off that close win on the road in Auburn, double overtime. You could say what you want about Missouri, but that's going to be a big game for the Commodores. So let's talk more about the Tigers. Last little thing before we call it a day here in Hodges. But with LSU hosting Texas A&M on Saturday, and then Bama in 2 weeks, right? And then later on the road after the bye, not to mention, you got Arkansas that just lost to A&M by 3. And then finishing your SEC season off with Oklahoma on the road, who plays Ole Miss this week at home, which could be a big win for them. So what's a realistic record for this team? Is 7-5 realistic? Is 8-4 realistic? Is 6 wins realistic? What do you think? Me personally, you're about to say that they're going to lose to Arkansas. I don't think there's a world this team loses to Arkansas.
You put words in my mouth a little bit. I think 6-6 is realistic. You're asking realistic versus what I think. I think they finished 7-5. I think 8-4 is realistic. I think 6-6 is realistic. If you ask me what I think is more likely to happen between 8-4 and 6-6, I'm taking 6-6 to be honest with you. There's absolutely a world where they don't win another SEC game. With just how it lines up, you said it. You said with Arkansas especially. You say they lost to A&M by 3. Dig a little deeper. They lost to Tennessee by 3. They took them into overtime, right? Double OT, something like that. And that game was at home, but it was overrun.
Well, both games were at home.
Yeah.
So that
No, sorry, they were at Tennessee. I was thinking of the state game for Tennessee. My fault. But Tennessee looked pretty. They didn't look good against Alabama, but they've looked good throughout the year. Played kind of close against Ole Miss. Even it was a 2-score game, but or sorry, it was a 1-score game. What am I reading? They're in it. Like I would not want to face that offense right now. And if we get another,
they can score points.
We get another defensive output like we did against Vanderbilt. You're 6-6.
Yeah.
So do I think they're going to finish 6-6? No. But if you ask, if we go season in retrospect in January and December, and you ask me, when we finish up 6-6, and you ask me mid-October, do you think, did you think that 6-6 was on the table? Absolutely. And so I feel like there's a flippancy right now with the head coaching, with coaching and all that stuff. And so 7-5 is realistic, and I think 6-6 is also realistic. Just there's a lack of care right now, and when you don't care, you open the door to losing more than you should.
I said 8-4, but I'm also gonna say give or take the Bama and A&M game. I originally said the Oklahoma game, but I'm a little more confident on that. I'm a little confident against Bama too, but I don't know.
I think Bama beats LSU by 30 points. I think the way that Bama team has looked, I think Ty Simpson. I'm gonna start the Ty Simpson to the Saints agenda here pretty soon. He's incredible. Talk about Heisman winners. That man,
he's up there.
That man should win the Heisman in my opinion right now. He's incredible. But look, I think there's a very realistic world you go into this weekend and you beat A&M. I think there's a very, very realistic world that happens.
Sure. I think that happens only because you're at home.
100%.
Forget College Station. If you play that game at the Superdome, you're losing by 2-3 scores.
But I mean, you could say that about South Carolina. You could say that about Florida.
No.
Like you play that Florida game in Gainesville, you probably lose. You play that game in Columbia, you probably lose. It's just how it is.
Yeah, that's how it is. No, I get it. Yeah.
Brian Kelly has what? One loss at home?
Two. Wait, no, one.
One loss at home in his career. I mean,
two.
Is it two?
What was the other one? Oh, right.
Yeah,
well,
2 losses at home. So Tennessee, the day game, and then Bama. So like one night loss at home. So that that tells me a lot. But I think it's possible. I think you can beat A&M. But I will say this: if you lose to A&M and you lose to Bama, I think the predictions can go out the window because you're going to have an interim head coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I think 7-5 is really realistic.
Yeah.
I think 7-5 is really realistic in the sense that if you lose to A&M, there's not a world you go and beat Bama and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
On the last, and especially if that game against Oklahoma, it's probably most likely going to mean a lot to that team over there in Norman. It's going to mean a lot more than it is to this team in Baton Rouge. In terms of
and
playoffs,
especially like LSU down the stretch has consistently been kind of shaky since Brian Kelly came here. Yeah.
So I mean, I think 7-5 is a realistic record. If they go 6-6, I'll give you $20. Like I don't necessarily.
I'm not gonna put. I have a 20 in my pocket. I was about to put it on the table. I'm gonna talk better about it.
I don't necessarily think that that's gonna happen. Is it realistic? Yes, probably.
Yeah.
But I also think that you beat A&M, you lose to Bama, you lose to Arkansas, he's gone anyways.
Yeah.
I think that Arkansas game is like, there's not a world you can lose that game.
You can't afford to lose it.
You just can't afford it. Yeah, it's not how it works. Yeah. But yeah, the thing is like if they go 8-4 and then they go to a bowl game and they play in the Duke's Mayo Bowl and then they get a win against Wisconsin or something. You know what I mean? Then he's at another 9-win season for Brian Kelly. And so it's like it's frustrating all the way around, but at the end of the day, I do think there are a bunch of realistic scenarios that could happen. So, I think we've got most of our anger out in this 50-minute podcast. But that's gonna do it for us here today in the John Frisha podcast studio for this episode of the Hodges Huddle. Big thanks to Alex and Randallin, as always, for joining me today. And Jay and Will behind the scenes doing their thing. Can't beat it, man. Another day in Hodges. What else would you rather be doing, man? But anyways, thank you all for tuning in. We will see you guys next week. And don't forget, Tailgate Show this Friday, live on YouTube and on the radio 91.1. I'm Michael Poggi, and this has been the Hodges Huddle.